Welcome back for another episode of Civility Wins, the Family Law Edition. I am your host, Kristen Goss. I am the founder and owner of KWG, Family Legal and Mediation Services. We are your knowledgeable, warm, and gracious attorneys, and we divorce with civility. And I have today a very special friend and a guest, Ellen Mitchell. And before we get into our conversation, I'm going to briefly give a little bio about her, and then we'll get into our conversation. So, Ellen is a dynamic real estate professional with over 25 years of experience. She's dedicated to guiding clients seamlessly through their real estate process. Since becoming a licensed realtor in 1998, she has specialized in probate sales, senior relocation, divorce, and general real estate with the goal of being her client's realtor for life. She is a certified probate real estate specialist and a holder of CDPE and REO certifications. She's well equipped to effortlessly navigate Miami-Fort Lauderdale's probate system. Her trusted and expert team, comprised of attorneys, financial planners, lenders, and more, gives her a competitive advantage in facilitating complex real estate transactions. She has so many other designations and she's actively involved in the community. Without further ado, thank you, Ellen, for joining me in today's podcast.
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you so much for having me. And we should have said collaboratively trained because of you.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. And as most of the audience should know by now, that's one of the main reasons why I started this podcast was to spread the word about the collaborative process. It's been around for almost 10 years, 8 years. The law or the statute was enacted in 2017 in Florida, and not too many people know about that process. And we'll get into a little bit of a discussion with that later. But before we do, if you can share a little bit about yourself with the audience.
Sure. Again, thank you so much for having me. I was really fortunate to meet Kristen a few years ago, and it was Kristen that told me and taught me about collaborative family law, which I had never heard of. So I am collaboratively trained because of you. I became a realtor in 1998. I'm originally from Chicago and moved here in 1990. I have 3 beautiful children. I just became a grandmother on March 29th to a beautiful grandson, Henry. And 2 years ago in February, my son, Kevin, who's my youngest of the 3, started working with and for me. So that's allowed me to increase my capacity. And it's a joy to be able to share what I love with my son. My 2 daughters live out of state. One lives in Alabama, and the other one, with my grandson, lives in Illinois. And I am divorced and remarried for 14 years. We have a blended family. So I have 3 children. He has 4 children, and life is good.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing. Speaking of collaboratively trained, if you can share a little bit about your role, because you would be considered an allied professional in the process, and how your role is key when it comes to, let's say, a divorce, for example, and there is a home that needs to either be sold or bought out by one spouse versus the other. How does your expertise come into play with that?
That's a great question. I wish that I had known about collaborative law when I went through my divorce, which was extremely acrimonious. And it's amazing that in going through the divorce process, that all of the paperwork would be done prior to looking at who could afford what. And what I mean by that is oftentimes there's a home. Oftentimes the wife would want to stay in the home with the children. And unless we have a lender look at the finances, she is probably going to be required to refinance that home within 24 to 48 months after the divorce. And she may not be able to afford to stay in the home, where if a lender looked at the numbers, perhaps she would need an extra $200 a month in child support to qualify. And so by working with a lender, you would be able to see that. And sometimes staying in the home just isn't an option, no matter how much somebody wants to stay in the home. And so where I come in is working with the family and finding out from them what is really important about the home besides the physical home. Is it the school system? Is it the friends in the area? Is it the access to doctors, to other family members? What is it that is really important to them about the area that the home is in? And perhaps we can find a smaller home in the same area. Perhaps we can find a townhome in the same area and keep children in the same school district and have as least amount of disruption as possible. So sometimes just walking through it and finding out, I know we can't recreate the physical home, but what are the things besides the physical home that are really important? And once we start breaking that down, we can start to get some excitement about what things could look like afterwards and to move forward in the process. But it is a process, and I think it's so important just to take it step by step and meet people where they are.
That's important. And I think that oftentimes the supportive nature of working in a collaborative process is what could be missing when you're going to court and litigating, which a lot of my cases are litigation as well. Things are more fast-paced and a lot of things are overlooked without having a professional like you who is skilled, and sometimes just being supportive and saying, hey, let's take a step back when you're working with families, because when you're going through the process and emotions are high, it's hard to see the forest. It's like just a big forest. And like, if we take things one step at a time, let's chop this tree down. Okay, then we can go to the next tree and so forth. It makes it a little bit better to manage and more holistic, I believe. And so I think that someone like you with your skills and your expertise is key. So appreciate what you do and how you help families.
Thank you. I would also say, in terms of the communication, I always ask who should be included in the communication. Is it, and I'm going to speak in heteronormative terms, is it the husband and the wife? Is it the husband, the wife, and the attorneys? Who should be included? And so I was working with a family and I was instructed to include the husband and the wife in all communication, which I did. And I got a call from the wife very angry with me, and she was like borderline hysterical. And I said, just take a breath. What is happening? And she said, you told me that you would include me in all communication. And I found out that there are all these emails that my husband has been receiving that you completely blocked me out of. And I said, okay. I said, let's go through this. What's your email address? Go into your email, check your social, check your promotional, check your spam. And their spam filter had been blocking catching all of the emails that I had been sending. So although she was included in everything, she didn't know because she didn't see it. She was, rightfully upset and didn't go through probably the process she would have gone through had she been in a different state of mind. And when she saw that indeed she hadn't been excluded, she was included in everything, she felt much better. So I think just taking a step back, taking a deep breath and saying, we're going to figure this out together. Let's figure this out. That makes a really big difference, instead of being defensive or, no, I did send it. And let's figure it out. Let's work together. We're all here, with the same goal in mind. And I love the fact that one of the big goals of collaborative is, how are things going to look like the day after the divorce is final? They are still going to be a family. It's a different family. It looks different, but they're still going to be a family if there are children involved forever. So how do we want that to look the day after the divorce is final? And I think always coming back to that is really helpful in putting things in perspective.
I like that. You mentioned earlier the blended family, and that can be on the family law side and estate planning. There are a lot of things to consider when you're dealing with blended families. And so I want to kind of change the conversation a little bit. And from the estate planning perspective, there are a lot of things that families should be aware of, and having an experienced estate planning attorney, when I'm working and seeing families who are in blended scenarios, there are a lot of things that come up. So just curious with you if you've run across that. And I know that you're extremely prepared, you're extremely organized. So if you could share with the audience some words of advice that you would give from not only a professional, but a wife, a mother who is in a blended family scenario.
Absolutely. So, as you know, I'm also an adoptee. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm an adult adoptee, and my family is rather complex. I really encourage everybody, my children, when they turned 18, I had their documents done with them for healthcare surrogate, power of attorney, all of those documents, because people make the mistake of thinking, well, that's my child. And so, or my child's not going to pass away, and God willing, they won't. But kids go to school, they get alcohol poisoning, there's a car accident. And even though that's your child, because of the HIPAA regulations, you're not able to call and get the information
Mm-hmm.
that you think you are.
Mm-hmm.
Or if the adult child has special needs, and you need to be able to access and help them navigate things. So I would start thinking about getting those documents prepared if they have nothing, because they do have autonomy. And if you want to be able to step in and advocate for them in an emergency situation, you need to have that in writing. And then when I'm helping people to buy or sell a home, it always surprises me that people don't have their estate planning in order.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll talk with them about, okay, now you own a home. What if something happens? Who does the house go to? And they'll say, well, I want it to go. And I always say, you have an estate plan, whether you know it or not. You have an estate plan that you created, or you have an estate plan that's created for you by the state of Florida or by the state that you reside in.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want things to go a certain way, it's really important to sit down with a professional like yourself and have those written out very clear, and have an electronic version of it as well, mostly for the healthcare surrogate, power of attorney, because when things happen in an emergency situation,
Mm-hmm.
you can't always get to somebody's house, get in the safety deposit box, or get
Mm-hmm.
into the safe, get the documents. And so
Mm-hmm.
you just want to have access to that. And in
Mm-hmm.
terms of your stuff and your personal property, and I am in a blended marriage, there are certain things that I want. I want my wedding ring from my first husband is very important to my daughter Heather, that she have that, and I want her to have that.
Mm-hmm.
And how does she get that? It's because it's clearly, it's
Mm-hmm.
clearly spelled out. And
Mm-hmm.
there are other things now that we're having grandchildren,
Mm-hmm.
that, I've got my great uncle's pocket watch, and there,
Mm-hmm.
just certain things that I want to go to certain people, and I can say it, but if
Mm-hmm.
it's not somewhere in writing, who's
Mm-hmm.
going to remember it if it's all in my mind and I'm
Mm-hmm.
not here to tell them where I want these things to go? So
Mm-hmm.
some people think it's macabre or dark, or if you do it, something's going to happen. And I kind of think the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you get everything done and you have it in the drawer and you just forget about it, it's just there for, maybe someday. And I know that when my mom passed, it made things, I was her healthcare surrogate and power of attorney, and it made the decisions much easier because I was carrying out her wishes.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't what Ellen wanted. It was
Mm-hmm.
what my mother said she wanted when she was healthy and of sound mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so without that, it would have been much more difficult to have made those
Absolutely.
decisions.
I would
So,
agree. Speaking of that, it just took me back when my mom was ill in 2010. I was her healthcare and power of attorney, and I had to be supportive and honor her wishes when she did not want to be placed on life support, And I think about that because, like you said, the decision was already made. She didn't want to be in pain, and I had to honor her wishes. Had there not been that in writing, I likely would have said no, hold off, and she would have what quality of life would she have had? But I think the most important thing is it's empowering for families to be able to make that decision. And you don't have to worry as, someone who is the next generation or whoever is appointed as the power of attorney, healthcare, etc. You just honor the wishes of the person that's made. And I liked the other thing that you mentioned, the perspective, I think is key in looking at it as the glass half full opposed to the glass empty or half empty. And I say having an estate plan that you are in control of, you can really, like you say, put it away. And I also equate it to being in an ocean. There's so much water around, right? And without having something in place where you know exactly what's going to happen, you're just drowning. Having it in place, you could be in the ocean and you're just floating and, you're at peace because at the end of the day, if something were to happen, this is how it's going to be carried out. And not knowing, I think, is where, for me at least, it makes it very, very horrible. And and I want to talk a little bit about that with your designation as a probate specialist. You've seen it all.
Yes, I have.
When people don't have an estate plan in place. So I would like for you to share a little bit about your experience with your designation as a probate specialist, what that's like for the audience.
So I had the honor of assisting my great aunt and uncle many, many years ago when they were sick through, when they were older, through the aging process and then moving from their condo to an adult living facility and on and on. And then my grandmother and then my mother. I think just because of generationally, where I am. Mm-hmm. And I saw so many seniors that didn't have adult children near and that didn't have any advocates. And it became that there's so many decisions to make, who looks out. Mm-hmm. And I got my certified probate real estate specialist designation. It has to be over a decade ago now. Mm. And it's allowed me to work with probate attorneys like yourself, mm-hmm. elder law attorneys, helping mm-hmm. with senior relocation, and really anticipating things that happen that people don't think about. Mm. So, for example, I'll get a call from a probate attorney that there's a loss, and they'll put me in touch with their adult children who are often out of state, up north. Mm-hmm. And, we'll have the conversation, has anyone rekeyed the property? Mm-hmm. And they're like, what? I'm like, well, mom lived there. She gave keys to people over time. Now it's vacant. Word travels fast. And people will go into apartments that they have keys to. Mm. And they'll look at things and they'll say, oh, I always admired Myrna's china. And she told me that one day I could have it. And they will help themselves to things that are not theirs. And they don't look at it as stealing. Mm. It's absolutely stealing if mm-hmm. it wasn't left to them. Mm-hmm. But they don't look at it that way. And so they'll go in and take things that are family heirlooms, important to the family, and they don't see it as mm-hmm. wrong. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, let's change the locks on the door and just give the keys to the people that need it today. And then, has anyone emptied out the refrigerator? And they're like, what? And I'm like, well, mom was living there. There are perishable items. And they'll say, I never thought of that. How could you? You're dealing with the immediacy of an emergency, of the loss of a parent mm-hmm. or a close loved one. Mm-hmm. So of course you wouldn't think of that. But I've done this for so long that I'll think of it. I'll go in, I'll empty out the refrigerator, I'll mm-hmm. meet the locksmith, I'll have the keys, the mm-hmm. locks on the door changed. Perhaps there's a car there. Is anyone, starting the car? Because if it just sits there, it's going to die. And one of the most important things in Florida is monthly maintenance. Mm. And so being younger, well, from that generation, I would be seen as younger. Being younger, I have most of my monthly bills automated. They're just paid automatically. But a lot of elderly people, they write a check every month. And so they're writing a check every month for their monthly maintenance. Someone just lost a parent. They're not thinking about the monthly maintenance for the condominium. And I've had many families where the condominium is in foreclosure, not because the family didn't have the funds. It didn't occur to them that the monthly maintenance needed to be paid every month, and that it just didn't even hit their radar on the multitude of things that they were dealing with. And in Florida, at least, they're starting foreclosures very quickly as 90 days. So to lose a family member, then have the condo go into foreclosure, which is very expensive. You've got to pay, the attorney's fees of the association, late fees, and the fees just to bring it up to date, and just the emotional, like, oh my gosh, just another thing. So I feel so fortunate that I'm able to help walk them through just those basic things, that they're basic, but they have to be done. And things like returning the cable box, as simple as that. You can't turn off the cable until the cable box is returned. And if you're in New York and the condo's here, you're not thinking about the cable box. And so I had a client that I had done like all the things for. And he said, Ellen, we would have had to take another 2 to 3 trips to Florida if we didn't have you down there to do this for us. You are our boots on the ground. And I said, thank you so much, but I feel a little too feminine to be your boots on the ground. I'd like to be your heels on the ground. And that's how I got my slogan. And I love it, because that is what we do, is we take care of things for people so that they don't have to. And we think very proactively about what can we do to be of service to this family during this difficult time. And I haven't even talked about the marketing and sale of the property, because I can do that with my eyes closed. I've been doing this for over 25 years, full time. But it's that extra, it's just giving that extra and really caring, really wanting to be a resource for the attorneys, for the families, and to just be of service. And that's what, that's what I enjoy doing. And that's why I got my probate designation. And that's why I got collaboratively law trained, because I have the opportunity to work with people like you who have those have that servant heart. And it's so important and so needed in this world, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so much you shared with that. And I appreciate you for sharing, dealing with the loss of a loved one on one hand is overwhelming in and of itself. And so the service that you provide to support the family, especially when they need it most, is priceless, I believe. So thank you again for your service. I wanted to mention too, with guardianship. So that's another issue, right? And not to say that for me and for you, I know with our experience, there's no age limit on Alzheimer's or dementia. There are a lot of people that unfortunately are being diagnosed younger and younger. And so if you can share a little bit about your experience dealing with a family who has a loved one still living, but they may be going through dementia or Alzheimer's, if there's something additional you would want to share with the audience about that.
I think it's so important to lead with empathy. And really, I've had people with memory loss and dementia that have gotten angry with me out of the blue, and that's not their, typical demeanor. And they'll ask the same question a million times. And just to know that, that could be me one day. That could be my child. That could be my parent. And to really just be calm and grounded and not reactive, and just be a support for that person and their family. And to help connect the family with resources if they don't have them, to make sure that they're connected with a good attorney like yourself that knows what they're doing and is able to advocate for that family member, because they need a level of support that's much greater than a typical level of support. And so I think I like to think of myself as like the hub and then there are the spokes, and to be able to connect them. My mother had memory loss. She had an event. She went into the hospital. She was clearly cognitively fine. She got out of the hospital. She didn't remember her grandchildren. She didn't remember almost anything. She stopped paying her bills. She only remembered me, my sister, and her brother, none of our children. And when I took her to the neuropsychologist, he said it was very important to take her somewhere that she would have to make decisions, that we make a series of small decisions every day that we don't even think about. What am I going to wear? How's my hair going to look? What shoes am I going to wear? I'm going to meet Kristen. What route am I going to take? We don't think about it because we just do these things automatically. And he said that it would be important to take her to a restaurant at least once a week and have her make decisions like, what am I going to order? Where do I want to go eat? And then he recommended for us, we took her to the Daniel Cantor Center, which is in Sunrise, and they have wonderful programs for people with different levels of memory loss. And so she would go there a couple of times a week, and they would have all kinds of different things that were appropriate to her level of memory loss, and it made her feel more connective, part of. But I wouldn't have even known, like, how would I have known that that existed had I not gone through that process? And so for someone else, geographically, it might not be the Daniel Cantor Center, but to help them to find services similar to that that are in their area that can be of service. So I think really just being plugged into the community and helping to connect people to things. I didn't know what I didn't know. That never would have occurred to me before I had the experience with my mother. But since I did, I've been able to share that experience to help others. You know?
I love it. I love it. So I have two more questions for
Okay.
you. One is if you could share with the audience some of the things that you're involved in the community, and some things that you have, like upcoming events that you would like to share.
Okay, things that I'm involved in the community, a lot of different things. So Krista and I are both in a wonderful organization called Ms. Esquire, where we're able to meet with like-minded professionals to brainstorm and share different resources and ideas. So that's incredible. I'm on the board of directors for an organization called Dream Beyond Your Journey, and that's for women and their children where the women have substance abuse issues. And it's the only one of its kind in Dade-Broward County where women can go and live with their children and get support. In fact, I'm doing a life skills course there tonight. It'll be our first monthly life skills course that I'm very excited about. I'm involved in Jewish Federation, which I love. It's very near and dear to my heart. And we've volunteered with the name is eluding me. We've volunteered with it's like their food pantry, the Dora Janae food pantry for many, many years. And we deliver food to Holocaust survivors once a month. In South Florida, we have a tremendous amount of Holocaust survivors. And if you could imagine, you know, historically, they're very old by this point, the people that are still alive. So being able to go and bring them kosher meals on a monthly basis and to see them and be supportive is one of the highlights. In fact, one of my nieces just graduated from high school, and she got her cord for volunteerism. And she did most of her volunteer work with myself and my husband, which feels really good. So awesome. I would say there are many opportunities out in the community to be of service and things that are, you know, bring you joy, and working primarily with women, children, and the community. Those are the things that I enjoy most.
I love it. I love it. Having that servant heart is needed, especially in today's society, for sure. So thank you for what you do in our community.
I
Because
should
it
say
takes a
too,
village.
as you know, I've been to Cambodia, of all places.
Yes.
I went on my 4th humanitarian mission to Cambodia this year for 2 weeks, and the first 2 times I went with my daughter Heather. The third time I went with my daughter Heather and my best friend Angela. And the fourth time I went with my husband Brian. And just getting out there and being of service to the world, it really does bring a different perspective. And you see, with all of the challenges that we're currently having in our country, we are so, so blessed, so blessed. And to have that perspective of to whom, whom much is given, much will be expected.
Yeah.
And to really have a grateful heart as well for all that we do have here. So
I love it. Well, before we leave, if you can let the audience know where they can find you for more information, if they want to reach out, say they're in need of a realtor, someone with the probate designation, a collaborative designation, has over 25 years of experience, share with the audience where they can find out more information about you.
Sure. So I do have a lot of videos on a lot of the discussions a lot of the topics that we discussed today. My YouTube is miami-probate.com. So it's a lot of content there. It's really a resource of information for people. And you can also always just call or text. My cell phone is 954-292-6412. And if anyone just wants to have a conversation about any of the topics we discussed or anything real estate or any senior services, if I don't know the answer, I can find out and connect you with the right person. It has been such a pleasure to be here with you. And you had said 3 adjectives for yourself at the beginning of the podcast.
Yes.
And they were?
Knowledgeable, warm, and gracious.
Knowledgeable, warm, and gracious. And if I were to introduce you, Kristen, that's exactly what I would say. So thank you for being you and doing what you do.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Look forward to future collaborations.
Great.
So, you have watched another episode of Civility Wins, the Family Law Edition. Again, I am Kristen Goss, the founder and owner of KWG, Family Legal and Mediation Services. We are your knowledgeable, warm, and gracious attorneys. And tune in for us again. Until next time, please don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. We'll see you again soon.